Welcome to New Britain, Connecticut and the New Britain Museum of American Art. It was founded in 1903 and the first museum dedicated to American art in this country.
This is my exhibition, Reaching for the Moon. It contains over 135 pieces from over 18 books. Two of the principal books in the exhibition are Reaching for the Moon and Look to the Stars, two picture books by Buzz Aldrin.
Reaching for the Moon is the story of Buzz Aldrin's life from childhood until he walks on the moon at the age of 39. It covers his young years in Montclair, New Jersey, his first airplane ride, and his entire life leading up to that momentous moon landing on July 20th, 1969.
Look to the Stars, Buzz Aldrin's second picture book, covers 500 years of exploration of space and air in only 40 pages. What's interesting is that Buzz Aldrin comes from an aviation family. His father was an accomplished pilot and knew Orville Wright, Amelia Earhart, Charles Lindbergh, and was a student of Dr. Robert Goddard, the inventor of the first liquid fuel rocket. Eileen Collins was the first woman to pilot and command the shuttle. Its last mission will be coming up next year. There are only 5 left. Jean George's original Newbery Award-winning novel, Julie of the Wolves, gave way to a trilogy, Julie and Julie's Wolf Pack.
The Last Polar Bear by Jean Craighead George is about a boy and his grandmother who rescue a small abandoned polar bear on an ice floe in Barrow, Alaska. It is a wonderful story about how children are learning how to save polar bears in a warming environment. The Wolves Are Back, also by Jean George, is a great story about how the wolves were reintroduced back in Yellowstone National Park in 1995 to great success.
Sitting Bull Remembers is the story of Sitting Bull remembering his life after he's been captured and is about to go into a reservation. The entire book is a remembrance of where he's been and what he's contributed to his culture. Yankee Doodle America was published in 2006 for the 230th anniversary of our country. It's an experimental book for me in as much as it's an alphabet book, and it's also a book that takes a child on the road during revolutionary times, visiting inns and public houses. These inns and public houses were marked by wooden signs of various shapes and sizes and various subjects. So each of the 26 letters in the alphabet is painted with a different scene, a different character, or a different battle or event that took place during the Revolutionary War. So when the child starts the book and down the road of the Revolutionary War, you get the entire history in only 26 letters. The Story of Rachel Carson by Amy Ehrlich is an inspiration for young girls who want to go into science. She paved the way for generations of women who wanted to do something that in her time was next to impossible. She wrote a book called Silent Spring, which changed the way we think of nature. Florence and I are very interested in early childhood education and children's imaginations. Christmas Tree is an experiment in asking a child, if you were a Christmas tree, what kind of tree do you think you could be? The next book is Margaret Wise Brown's classic Nibble Nibble. I had the wonderful experience of illustrating 5 of the poems from the original book. Hop, skip, jump, a rabbit won't fight. Hop, skip, jump, a rabbit won't bite. Lots of interesting use of the language for young children and a chance to paint all these fuzzy creatures for young children. Some Pumpkin Heads Pretend to be Cowboys is from the book Pumpkin Heads, one of my very first books that I wrote and illustrated, and it's all about exploring the shape of the pumpkin, its various characteristics, and all the faces that one can create from a pumpkin head. It's a book that has really become a classic in the last few years, and it's being used all over the country in schools. Cat, What Is That? Is by my friend Tony Johnston. She's written a wonderful poem in this book about the essence of being a cat. And of course, I had the great pleasure of using our cats, Mouse and Willie, as some of the subjects in the book. And it's all about how funny and how endearing cats can be. I am the desert, I am free, come walk the sweeping face of me. Mojave was my very first picture book, published in 1988. It explores the land as it speaks to you in the first person, explores all the landscape, the beauty of the desert, and all the animals that live there. A lot of my work is dealing with the natural world, and one of my favorite books is Into the Woods, the story of John James Audubon living his dream. What I like about John James, he was almost 35 before he decided he was going to paint every bird in North America. He walked, he canoed, he rode on horseback for 40,000 miles, doing exactly that in less than 20 years. Another favorite book of mine is by Jean Craighead George, one of the great naturalist writers for children in the last 50 years. It's Luck, the story of a sandhill crane, a young crane named Luck who is a hapless crane who's always getting lost and always trying to find his way by following someone else. Abe Lincoln Remembers by Ann Turner is a book about Abraham Lincoln remembering his life the evening before he and Mary go see a play. It's the story of his entire life from his childhood forward to the presidency. It's a wonderful book that reminds a child of how much Lincoln loved to read, even though he was not an educated man. With less than 1 year of schooling, Lincoln would travel 50 miles in any direction just for the privilege of reading a book. Abraham Lincoln Comes Home is by Robert Burleigh. It's the story of a young boy named Luke and his father who get up in the middle of the night and take a horse and buggy down to the railhead to visit the Lincoln funeral train that's passing through their small town in Ohio. This is about the funeral train that traveled from Washington, D.C. to Springfield, Illinois in 1865 over 13 days, 1,660 miles. My exhibition also includes a sampling of my early illustrations for book covers. Some of the finest I've done, I believe. The portrait of Truman for David McCullough's Truman was done in 1992, and it is now in his private collection. The paperback cover for To Kill a Mockingbird was first published 22 years ago. It is still on the paperback today. It has been reproduced in millions of impressions. It's probably one of my best covers of all time. Ghost Ship by Mary Higgins Clark is an interesting story about Thomas, who visits his grandmother on the Cape, goes down to the beach and finds a treasure. He discovers a belt buckle. As soon as he does that, a ghost of a cabin boy appears. It is Silas. Silas begins to tell Thomas about his life back in the whaling days and about Captain Hallett and who he was, because Thomas lives in his grandmother's house that was once owned by Captain Hallett. It's a very intriguing story, and of course, since it's Mary Higgins Clark, there's always a mystery to be found. Thanks for taking this virtual tour of my exhibition, Wendell Minor, Reaching for the Moon, that was on display at the New Britain Museum of American Art in New Britain, Connecticut on September 12th through December 13th, 2009.